New DIY tutorial.
Hey, Elisa here with Cobble Creek Lane. Let me show you how to cast off a chunky knit blanket with a top chain border. This is where you'll begin to finish the blanket at this point after knitting to the width, the length, pattern, and colors that you wanted. The last row of knit stitches are larger. So to cast off, have 3 to 5 strands of yarn left to the width of the blanket. The top loops are larger than what you knitted for the blanket. So you'll sandwich the 2 end loops and pull the working yarn from behind to the left, pulling through to the right, making a loose chain loop, and gently place it over to the left. You'll sandwich together the next 2 loops, making another chain loop, gently placing over to the next stitch. Make sure each chain loop is large enough to be able to lay over to the next stitch. If you pull the chain loops over too tight, then the top of the chain border starts to round off, and really what we're going for is making the corners of the blanket more squared off. It gives it a nice finish. As you continue knitting your top chain border, it's okay to take your time to make sure your chain loops are consistent in size as you bring your working yarn from behind, pulling through from the left to the right, making another chain loop, and continuing in this pattern as you knit. So with hand knitting, it's common that you'll have to adjust your slack with your working yarn as you are knitting. And as you can see, we're about to come to the end. It's the left corner, so I am glad I gauged enough leftover yarn to finish the blanket. This is really important to remember when making your chunky knit blankets, to have enough yarn left over to be able to cast off your chain border. So coming to the end, you'll cast off the border with an open loop. With the end loop, you'll cut off the excess working yarn and pull the working yarn through the end loop and tighten it down on the edge. Now take the tail and gauge where you want to place it. Cut the remaining yarn and light the center cord and place it on the yarn, holding it until it cools. It'll just take a few seconds. Now you'll see the top chain border is done, as well as rest of the blanket. Although this video emphasizes making the chain border, come down my lane at Cobble Creek Lane where I make different chunky knit blankets and more. Cobble Creek Lane offers tutorials, DIYs, home decor, and crafts. Thanks for your support.